There we go. Stephanie, it's good to see you. So for those of you that don't know, my longtime babysitter and neighbor is here in the audience with us this morning. I did not expect to see her. Thank you for being here. Tim, thank you for being here too. That's a fun surprise. Thank you. So, as some of you know, some of you remember, or if you're just reading in the bulletin, my name's Nick, and I have the honor and privilege of being the interim pastor here. And so rather than dive right into the word and try to tell you about what's going on in here, because there's plenty of time for that, I figure let's cut the middleman. I'll tell you my story, introduce myself, and then we don't have to do that 70 to 80 times. Is that fair? Fair. So my story begins a long time ago. A long time ago. I was born in 1995. I know, so long ago. 1995. Down the road, just a ways up the 205 in Portland Adventist Medical Center. Woo! That's right. Yeah, so I was born and raised right here in Portland, Oregon, about 20 minutes that way. And it was a great place to grow up. My parents are wonderful. My dad his name is Brian, and you'll get to hear about him in stories. He features often in my sermons. In his own words, 20 years of bad parenting has led to a lifetime of sermon illustrations. And he's a great source of joy. He's a good friend now. We've made that transition from parent to friend, and it's one of those beautiful blessings that I'm glad to have. My mom is a medical doctor. She is Chinese by ethnicity, so to hear Mandarin spoken this morning was an unexpected delight. She practices medicine at the hospital there. She's actually an OBGYN. She did not perform her own delivery, though. One of the things that came with growing up in my family with my parents that was instilled in me from an early age was a desire for excellence. Whatever I did, whatever I will do, whatever I'm doing will be done with excellence. And so that created a level of pressure to perform, to do things well. I remember this. My mom and dad talked to me, and they said, Nick, whatever you do, even if it's collecting garbage for a living, you will be the best garbage collector. Now, they opened the field as to what I could do, but I thought I wanted to be a doctor. That's what I thought. As you can probably tell, that hasn't really worked out. But who knows what the Lord has planned. But for now, that's not where we are. But I thought I was going to be a doctor. This is what I thought I was going to do. And it was a natural path. It was a familiar path for me. You see, my mom is a doctor. Her father is a doctor. His brothers were doctors. His brothers' children were doctors. So the terms Loma Linda and pre-med and biology and chemistry and anatomy were familiar to me. Amongst other terms, as you can imagine, from an OBGYN, but it's Sabbath, so we won't go into that. So, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I grew up going to school. I went to Hoodview Junior Academy in first grade. Whoop! But then I went to Portland Adventist Elementary School. I never made it to Rivergate except when we would play soccer against them growing up. That's okay. Forgiveness, right? Then I made the transition to PAA. And growing up, you learn the ins and outs of church and Christianity and the words that we like to use, like grace and forgiveness, and Jesus as Savior and Sabbath. So these words were common for me. I like to say that I was born in the carpool lane of Adventism. Adventism can sort of function like the carpool lane on a highway, where you can grow up in an Adventist environment, go to Adventist churches, go to Adventist schools, and you sort of exist in this little subculture of Adventism. That's me. I grew up inside Adventism. I didn't find Adventism later and then join the community. I was raised inside of it, whether that be at school, at church. But when I got to PAA, my spirituality began to grow, began to change, began to adapt. I was given opportunities to speak. People began to recognize that, hey, wow, this Nick Gosney kid, he gets it. He knows the words. He can say the right thing. He presents well. And so I had opportunities to speak. So I went to PAA and I spoke my sophomore year of high school. I spoke a little bit. And one speaking engagement at school led to a time to speak at Rockwood. And then that led to an opportunity to go to Costa Rica and do an evangelistic series there with the NPUC. And so at age 17, I went to Costa Rica, and I stood in front of a room full of people, and I told them all about grace and mercy and justification and sanctification, and words that, frankly, I was just sort of reading. Because what 17-year-old really knows what those words mean? And I could say them with a confident face. I could throw my weight behind these terms and talk about how we needed to repent for the Lord today. And people oohed and awed. My own spirituality had to shift a little bit. Because it's one thing to say these things, it's another to write them down for a paper, but to say them in front of people and ask for baptism, that feels like you have to have a little more teeth than just what you can throw onto a paper for a grade. And so my spirituality began to adapt. It began to grow. And for me, spirituality became something up here. It became something that I thought about a lot. I was able to read and put together my thoughts well when it came to spirituality. To be able to speak, be able to articulate these philosophies, these ideas about God. But God was very mental for 17-year-old Nick Gosney. He was this entity out there that, yeah, he existed. Yeah, I was sure of that. I was confident God existed. But the inner workings, the personal side of God, was about as foreign to me as a different language. Again, I could say the right words. I could tell you the right things. I'd been baptized by this point. But at 17 years old, God for me was this thing out there that I knew a lot about but didn't really feel. I don't know if I'm alone in the room when I say that, but I'm pretty sure statistically that I'm not. That there are somebody, maybe a few in this room, that God was this entity out there. He might be kind of like the impersonal Santa Claus. That he grants wishes to people who talk to him here and there, but really doesn't engage much more than that. And so when I went to Walla Walla, I made the transition, stayed along, came riding along in the carpool lane of Adventism. I rolled my way up to Walla Walla University. Again, still thinking, I'm going to do medicine, despite all these opportunities to speak and preach, and my love for the Bible. No, I'm doing medicine. I got to Walla Walla, I took 1 quarter of general biology, and I decided medicine was not for me. And my parents talked to me, and they were like, hey, Nick, we hear you talking about your Bible classes, and we don't really hear you talking about your biology class. So are you sure you really want to do this? And that's when I did some soul searching. I had the opportunity to work in the theology department as well at Walla Walla University my freshman year, which again probably should have been one of those signs that people talk about. But I developed a close personal relationship with a professor in the theology department. His name was Carl Kosart. He's a friend and mentor to this day. He's currently the dean of the School of Theology at Walla Walla. And one day, after I changed my major to theology, a couple years down the road, junior year of college, he said to me, "Hey, Nick, you know what I think you should do? You should go as a student missionary." Now, for a little bit of context, my dad went as a student missionary when he was in college at Pacific Union College. He went to South Korea in the 1980s, and he loved it. And I grew up hearing his stories about Korea and teaching English and how much of a life-changing moment that was for him. But anytime he would raise the idea of me going as a student missionary, I would meet it with one word: no. No. And it's interesting that these things that your parents say that they speak to you about, how it's so, the knee-jerk reaction as a child is just to say, no, I'm not going to do that, especially the high school to college age kid. We're in this phase of growing in independence, becoming a little more of our own person, having our own voice. And so the knee-jerk reaction, anytime my dad said, "Hey, Nick," throughout college, "Hey, Nick, you want to go as a student missionary?" No. But as soon as Dr. Cosart said it, "Sure, what a novel idea. That sounds wonderful. I guess I'll apply." That's what I said. So I did. I applied. And I went through and I looked at different spots that I was going to go. And I thought, oh, wow, there's a great spot in New Zealand. I'll be a dean. I'll work really hard. It'll be great. But then that fell through. And so I kept looking for a new spot. And I found a spot in the Philippines. And it was going to be, okay, I'm going to work in the Philippines as like a medical assistant. So I'll do a little bit of preaching, help out, but, get to, rediscover my love a little bit for all that medical knowledge that I poured into myself in high school. But then they didn't have enough people for that, so it became clear, like, that's probably not going to happen. So you probably need to find somewhere else. I had the opportunity to come back here to Portland, take a year off from school, work as a chaplain here at the hospital just down the road. And that was something I was interested in. I thought that would be really cool. But then that next week, school's starting to wrap up. It's about May. Still don't know where I'm going. Still up in the air. And I look down at the website for Adventist Missions, and it said Pohnpei, which is a little island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, just north of the equator, about 9 degrees off the equator, north of New Guinea, for context. Because the Pacific Ocean is just this big ball of blue, and then there's like little spits of land in there. Pohnpei is one of these. So I decided, hey, I'm going to apply. I've heard of friends that went to Pohnpei. They had a wonderful experience. Seemed like a good place. But I sent my name in, and I was like, well, let's see what happens. But then, as I'm sitting there in bed, wrestling away, wondering what's going to happen, I thought, no, I need to actually turn this over. I can't keep hanging on to this, keep making it my decision, my journey, my story. So I turned it over and I got down on my knees and I said, hey, God, it's been a little bit since we've talked, perhaps. At least since we've talked, and it hasn't been through me writing a paper about you. God, let's talk. I'm a little bit at a crossroads here. There's a couple of options that seem pretty good, but I want to know where you want me to go. I want to know where you want me to serve. And God, I need like a Gideon sign. I need something unmistakable, because I'm one of these people that, it's easy to meet those little miracles with skepticism. Especially in our culture, in our day, and at my age, it's easy to kind of dismiss, say, you know what, God, you're saying this, that, and the other, or you did this, that, and the other, but that bird was going to fly overhead anyways. That email was going to get sent anyways. So I just said, God, I want something unmistakable for me. So I went back to sleep, fell right to sleep. And I woke up the next morning to an email from the office of the mission services in Pohnpei saying that they had accepted my application to be the chaplain in less than 12 hours. which I took as that seems pretty clear. I can't really miss that one. I guess that's where I'm going. So I moved. I changed my whole plans. I was like, I'm going overseas. And so I had to raise a bunch of money, decided to go overseas less than 2 months later, got on a plane, flew from Hawaii to Pohnpei. And Pohnpei is one of these special places for me. In my journey, in my life, it's a special place. It's way out there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but it is a beautiful island and a special place for me. One story that happened there that is especially poignant for me. We went to a small island. So we went from small island Pohnpei to smaller island called Atoll. And Atoll is one of these places that looks like it's on the back of like a postcard. Like beautiful, stunning, clear blue water, where you see the white sand kind of drift off, and then the sand causes the water to go from that light blue into that deep ocean blue. Like clear as day, you can mark it. The beautiful palm trees that lean, and it's just like an island paradise. But do you know what's not paradise? Mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are not paradise. But the mosquitoes love the tropics. And so as we were hammock camping one night, laying in my hammock, waiting and enjoying this beautiful ocean scenery, I can feel them crawling all over my legs. And mosquitoes, as they do, tend to bite, which then causes things to swell, and that makes things itch. And so the bad sinner that I am began to scratch. I know that I'm not supposed to. And it turns out there's a good reason why you don't, because when you scratch something that hard that isn't meant to be scratched, things begin to pop and things begin to open that aren't supposed to be open, and then things that aren't supposed to get inside your skin. And so about a week later, when we came back from Atoll, I had a nice staph infection in my leg. And as a student missionary, we hear these stories about these crazy things that happen to the SMs, people who eat bugs in the morning and, they're fighting rats or cockroaches. And to me, a staph infection was just kind of par for the course. It's like, what are we going to do? But it got to the point that it started getting hard to walk on my leg. Like every step, every ounce of pressure on my foot was just that touch bit painful. So I kind of hobbled around and would walk from one place to the other. I called my mom. Thanks to the digital era, we didn't have to wait for a letter. So I called her, and I asked her, Mom, my foot's looking weird. It's starting to turn red, and it's about double the size of my other foot, and I can't see my ankle. And so she said, hey, here are the antibiotics you need to go get, and you need to soak your foot. So I started taking antibiotics, and that started helping things. People from the island came, and they would give me different medicines and that kind of thing to help, make my foot better, help sterilize the wound. But I remember one day, as I'm waiting for my foot to slowly start coming down, I'd made it back from teaching, toughed it out for my classes that morning. I was sitting in my home, soaking my foot in hot water. I heard the flip-flops of my principal come up the path. And as he came up the path, I knew what was going to happen. You see, I had signed up to be the chaplain on Pohnpei. What I hadn't signed up for, at least what I didn't think I'd signed up for, but was in the contract, was to be the substitute teacher. So whenever anyone didn't show, whenever any teacher wasn't there, it was my job to take that on. So I heard him come up the steps. I'm like, oh no, who didn't show up today? Not today. And he goes, Pastor, 3rd grade. And my heart sunk. I was like, I want to help, but my foot is killing me today. So I got out, put my flip-flops back on, and began to saunter and hobble and mosey my way down to 3rd grade. And as I'm hobbling along, I walked by the second grade classroom. In the second grade classroom, they all turned, they saw me, and I waved at them. But there was one student. His name was Joseph, and he's this cutest kid with a big smile and a bigger heart. And he sees me, and even despite my smile and my wave, Joseph knew that Pastor Nick was hurting. And so, without asking permission from his teacher, he got up from his desk, ran out the door, came over to me, got under my arm, and walked with me. And walked with me step by step by step till I got to the third grade classroom, sat me down, and he said, "Mister, when you need to leave, you let me know, and I'll come help you." It was in that moment that I realized that service wasn't just a one-way street. Sometimes when we serve, sometimes when we work, we get into this mindset that we're kind of like Superman. And we're going to come in, we're going to fix all the problems, we're going to help everybody else, but they don't help us because we've done this. We're from the USA. We have this degree. We have this for us. So everybody else is needy, but not us. But it was in that moment I realized that as much as I was serving Joseph and his family and his friends, that Joseph was also serving me and teaching me. And that's a lesson I wouldn't have learned if I wouldn't have gone to the islands. If I hadn't ended up going over there, wouldn't have learned that. But time continues on. We made it through my year in Pohnpei. I ate more bugs in my rice than I care to mention. But I made it home, back to the land of hot showers and bug-free rice. Graduated the next year from Walla Walla and was called by the Oregon Conference to come be a pastor. And that was an exciting journey. This was 2019, so just a few years ago. And I was told that I was going to be working at this church up in Longview, Washington, called Journey Adventist Church. Perhaps some of you are familiar. It's interesting to me, a little side note, that I have ended up working in my short pastoral career at the two churches that have a history with live nativity. Because Journey used to do this thing called Journey to Bethlehem for years and years and years. And now I've ended up here where Follow the Star is a wonderful part of the ministry. But besides that, I ended up at Journey, and it was a wonderful experience. They had a school, kind of like here. They had really wonderful people, like here. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. But something you should know about me is that I'm a little bit of an introvert. Despite what I may look like up here, I'm quite shy, and it takes me a while to get to know people. It takes me more energy to get up and go out and meet than to sit in my office and read. So during that first year at Journey, I'm starting to get that process of meeting that new group of people. We make it through Christmas. And then in March 2020, just like everywhere else in the world, I'm sure you can remember, that little thing called COVID-19 came a-calling. And do you remember when we all thought that was going to be like 2 weeks? And then that 2-year period that we called 2 weeks happened? Yeah. Well, COVID came to Journey, just like everywhere else in the world. I remember we were at the last board meeting deciding, hey, maybe we can't have church. Maybe that's the reality. Maybe we can't do all these things that we were planning on. Easter was coming up. Do you remember that? We couldn't do stuff for Easter. We couldn't have Easter Sabbath. So I've never had an Easter Sabbath as a pastor. We thought, May, that's when we'll open back up. And then May came and went. We ended up reopening the church in June, but it was right around then that I found out from the Oregon Conference that I was going to seminary. And I remember thinking to myself, and I told them this, I was like, okay, I'm shy, and I don't really know that many people. I'm just starting to get to know people, and now you're telling me I'm leaving? I thought the plan was 2 years and then seminary. But it turned out, no, that wasn't the case, because Journey was so wonderful, they needed that space opened up for someone else who was coming. And so what that meant for me was it was time to go to Michigan. And let me tell you, this was not my ideal. It was not my path. It was not what I had in mind. In my mind, I just spent 4 years doing theoretical paperwork. What I needed was boots on the ground practical work. What I needed was time to meet, to grow, to develop my ministry. I didn't need to go back and stare at a screen for years. So I told the conference this, and, well, it didn't work out. They said I was going. So I said, all right, I'll go. So August of 2020, about a year to the day, when I joined Journey, I left Journey. Went to Michigan, which, I'll say this kindly for anybody who's from Michigan, it's not the Northwest. And when you're from the Northwest and you love the Northwest and you like mountains, Michigan is scarce on those things. And so that made it hard. On top of the fact that seminary, from every pastor that I've talked to, has said that the best part of seminary is the people you get to meet and the friendships you get to develop and the journeys you get to learn about and the connections you get to have. Do you know what you're not supposed to do in the middle of a global pandemic? Meet people. You pick about 10 people, and then you decide if one of us gets COVID, we're all getting COVID. That was what it was like. That was my first year at seminary. We kind of just hunkered down and hid. And we attended Zoom classes, and we did the thing that every student who went through COVID did. Hide in your room and stare at a screen. But here's the thing. In the midst of that, I met another seminarian, one of those 10 people that I told you about. And he was like, hey, Nick, you know what I'm doing right now? I'm doing this thing called CPE, which CPE stands for Clinical Pastoral Education, otherwise better known as like chaplain training, hospital chaplain training. The idea is you go into a hospital, you work as a chaplain for about 40 hours a week over 10 weeks, and you learn and you grow and you put yourself in front of patients and you have to be the chaplain. And the goal is to learn and grow and develop and become self-aware. This was something that I'd been interested in. It was one of my alternatives to going to Pohnpei. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And then he was like, yeah, even better, you can get credit for it at the seminary. And I was like, that's the best. I'm going to do that because that sounds like that practical experience that I want, but I can do it while I'm at seminary. So I called back home. I started talking to the chaplains here at Portland Adventist, and I was like, hey, I want to come do CPE at this hospital. And then I found out that there was a person from Walla Walla who was just about my age who was also doing this chaplain training thing. And I was like, I'd like to meet her and talk to her. Comes to find out that she is somebody that I went to school with. Also a theology major. Her name is Katie. And I sat down and I began to talk with her. And she told me all about CPE and how great it was. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Also, Katie seems pretty neat. And so I finished my first year at seminary. I was accepted into the CPE program in Portland, and I decided I'm going to do this. So I started doing CPE. I began going to patient rooms, but during the day, if I'm perfectly honest, and my supervisors at the hospital, I saw them all yesterday, they can affirm this, there was also part of Nick that began to follow Katie around. Now, I want to be clear, I wasn't stalking Katie. I wasn't following her around weirdly, like creeping around corners or anything like this. But if there was a moment when, hey, let's grab lunch together. Hey, you said that you're hungry and you want a cookie? Let's walk and go get a cookie together. The best part of this, and I've talked with Katie about this, she had no idea. thought maybe something was up, but, didn't want to read too much into it. These games that we play and that, like, before people start dating, those of you who've been married a long time, maybe you can scratch the recesses of your mind and you remember this dance that everybody does where it's like, are we interested? Are we not? Are we just friends? Is this something more serious? And we kind of rock the boat back and forth. This was what about 2 months was. Inviting Katie to places and then hoping that she would say yes. Hey, let's go to Jamba Juice. Sure. Hey, let's go out to lunch. Sure. Hey, let's go out to dinner. Sure. So one evening, right before CPE finishes, I decide, you know what? I'm going to shoot my shot, as it were. I'm going to, put myself out there, be vulnerable, do the thing I really don't want to do, but for the sake of clarity, I'd rather know if she's actually interested in me than not know and go back to Michigan and sit in this state of like, well, if I'd been bold and courageous, then I'd know. I'd rather feel crushed and have honest clarity than tell myself lies and wonder. So I did. I finally built it up. I was like, okay, so she likes pasta and she likes cookies. Okay. I'm going to go to Spaghetti Factory because she really likes Spaghetti Factory. So one day after work, I waited for my moment, kind of like waiting and waiting. And as we're walking out of the door from the hospital, she goes, I don't want to go to the hospital cafeteria. And I was like, that's the sign. Katie, do you want to go to dinner tonight? Awkward pause. Sure. Perfect. Let's go to Spaghetti Factory. And I'm just like trying to like lead with as much confidence as I can muster. Let's go to Spaghetti Factory tonight, I said. She goes, okay. All right, I'll meet you there at this time. So we, plan to meet. And when she's here sometime, I'll let you hear her side of the story. But for me, this became, I'm calling every one of my guy friends that I know to like build me up. Like, what words do you have for me? Those of you that are in relationships, how did you do this? How did you get this talk? Like, what words did you say? So I get home, put on something that's dressy but not too dressy. Again, one of these like in-between things. So I got sort of dressed up, but not really. Went to Spaghetti Factory, met Katie, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Like, here comes the moment. And she goes, so I'm really hungry. My blood sugar's dropping. If I'm not really present right now, that's why. And I'm like, uh-oh, that's not what you want. So I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, and we order. She starts eating, I start eating, and it's loud in Spaghetti Factory, Clackamas. I don't know if you've been there recently, but it was one of those times when it's just kind of loud in there. I was like, this doesn't feel like the right spot to ask something like this or to be really vulnerable, because you don't want to get through that sentence of like, yeah, I really like you. Do you want to start dating? And then for her to go, what'd you say? And then have to repeat it. So I was like, oh, okay, this doesn't feel like the spot. And so we finish, pay for dinner. We're walking out to the cars, and I go like, I got to keep this going. Like, I can't, like, we're riding a good wave of momentum right now. Let's keep going. And so I was like, hey, you've talked about Crumble Cookies, which is this spot right there in the promenade. You've talked about how great and how much you love cookies. Let's go to Crumble. And she goes, okay. And I was like, do you want to ride together? And she goes, no. And I'm like, oh no, here it goes. Which was probably smart, because who knows how it might go, and I don't want to get stuck in her car. Like, what if she says no, and then we have to get back in her car? Like, that was probably wise. But it didn't feel good. So we get in the car, I'm riding over, second-guessing every last interaction we've had this last hour. We get to Crumble. We order cookies, which, by the way, I'm not a huge cookie person, so that was really fun for me to just sort of like nibble at this cookie while I'm building up all my confidence. And finally, I just kind of laid it out. We sat down, and we talked. And I said, Katie, I really like you. I like you more than just the friendship that we've built up. I would like to see where this goes, but I also want to know if there's any interest from you. And before I go back to Michigan, I'd rather ask and find out. And if you are interested, that's really exciting, and let's see where this goes. If not, well, let's still be friends. And then I waited. Again, those of you that have been married for a little while, maybe you can remember this moment where it just feels like time stops. And you wait for the one syllable word that can just make your day so good. And hope it's not that other one syllable word, no. Sitting there desperately waiting, hoping she says yes. What she actually said was, it's probably not a no. Katie, I know that you're watching on the live stream right now, so let's talk about this later. What she actually said was, it's probably not a no. And my question was, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Does that a yes? Is it, you said it's not no? After about 5 to 10 minutes of clarification, she said yes. And we've been dating for 18 months now. It'll be 18 months tomorrow. It's just been an absolute blessing. She is the top of my priority. When I met the leadership team here about a month ago, I told them my top priority is my relationship with God. But right after that, on this side of the kingdom, my top priority is my relationship with Katie. She's been an absolute blessing to me. And she was actually here a few weeks ago, and some of you got to meet her. We're hoping that long distance, this yucky word that has been created, we hope that ends soon, and that we get to have, we'll be able to spend more time together, and you'll get to meet her while I'm here. But here's the thing. The reason I tell you this story with all the laughs and the bumps and the ups and downs of it are, there's moments in life where, despite our best maneuvering and manipulating and strategizing, that things don't always work out the way we want them to. I did not want to go to seminary in 2020. I'll be the first to tell you that. It was not on any of the good options for me. And yet, if I hadn't gone to seminary when I did, I wouldn't have started chaplain training that next summer, and I wouldn't have reconnected with Katie, and we wouldn't be dating. Now, looking back, if I knew that I was going to meet Katie less than a year later, when they told me I was going to seminary, I would have told them, all right, I'll go to seminary wholeheartedly. I'll take that, even though it's not my ideal. It reminds me of the verse in Isaiah that we read earlier this morning. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Now, this is a beautiful thought. It's a beautiful one. And if you'll indulge me for just a small minute here as I preach, the context of this talks about a God who is compassionate and gracious. It's a God who talks to the wicked and spends time with them, who speaks to the unrighteous and calls him to himself and says, I'm wonderful and merciful and gracious. So regardless of where you are, regardless of what your journey has been, what bumps or bruises or cuts and wounds have been along the way, we have a God who beckons, a God who says, my ways are higher. That ideal that you may have in your mind, that thing that feels like, oh, if I could just do that, God goes, I've got that and tenfold. I have something so beautiful stored up for you, you can't even imagine it. as we journey together from this space, as we go on this road of 2023, and who knows what God has in store for us, I encourage you to remember the God whose ways, whose thoughts are better than ours. I forget, am I supposed to pray? Okay, I will pray with you. I'm still learning, so bear with me. Let's pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the opportunity to know who you are, to share, and to grow together. Thank you that you call us into a relationship with you and that you call us into relationships with one another. God, let this time be a blessing as we eat and as we talk together. In your name I pray, amen.